Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the video report for the first round. I'm showing you my first game. I'm afraid from the 7 points the Australians got, the women won their match 4-0 and the men beat Namibia 3-1. Unfortunately I was the one, but let me show you what happened. I'm playing Leonhard Müller, who seems to be a bit more Swiss than Namibian, but he probably lives in Namibia. So anyway, here's the game. I played E4, Sicilian defense, D6. Now I didn't sort of want to play against a dragon, so I played a side variation. You'll notice that now knight E4, taking the pawn is not possible because of queen to A4 check. Queen would go to A4 check and take the knight. That's a sneaky trick in this position. E6 castles, bishop G7. And now bishop B5 is a move that Anand first pioneered. It's basically to get the bishop out of the way so that the rook or the queen can defend the e-pawn. Bishop D7, bishop takes, and now this is a move that I've never seen before. Knight takes and queen takes are quite normal, but knight from F6 takes D7 is quite new to me. So I was quite happy here because white can seize the center with D4 as white does. Black castles, and now I started to play a little bit artificially. I think white has a very nice advantage in this position. Probably the best move is just to play queen to E2 and try to push this pawn to E5 to get a lot of space and to create a mating attack around the black king. But okay, I'm trying to develop all my pieces. Bishop E3, knight A6. And here queen D2 is probably the right move, but now that I'm on the wrong track, I might as well continue. Knight D2, but there's nothing terribly wrong with that move either. The reason why knight D2 should be delayed is because after this exchange on D4, if my knight was not on D2, I could put it on the better C3 square. Knights always belong on C3 because they have more influence over the middle. Now my opponent played D5. Okay, here, well, E5's okay. I don't want to criticize every move, but I think white should have gotten a little bit more out of the opening than I did. And queen B3, queen D7. A4, and one definitely can't say that white has an advantage at the moment, and I'm playing a bit artificially, but my excuse is I'm not warmed up, or I don't know. One can always find excuses. Hitting the rook, and the rook goes to C2. And now I'm trying to gain a bit of space on the queen side. Okay, my opponent doubles on the c file. Now, here one could get a little bit suspicious of white's position because black has complete control over the only open file. So it's a little bit uncomfortable, but nothing tragic. White goes back, white does have more space. And now bishop b4. What I was really afraid of is that black would just simply ignore the threat to the e-pawn and play something like knight e6 immediately. I was quite happy when black defended the pawn. Now I couldn't find anything better than to get rid of some of the pressure. So again, stopping the knight from coming in on f4, which would have been nasty because it's all kinds of mating threats. Knight f4 and then queen goes to g4 and then it's checkmate. So it's good to avoid knight f4 and queen g4 and checkmate. Okay, I think better probably would have been queen to c7. Black could have easily tripled on the c file, and then I can't really exchange. So now I can relieve some of the pressure. And now the worm has turned again. White's position is quite pleasant because of the extra space. So now you'll notice in this position that queen takes a4 would be a mistake, because white could take on b7, and after the queen took on b4, white plays queen to c8, and there's no way that black can stop the white b-pawn from queening. But naturally my opponent had just intended to recapture, as he did. Put my piece back on a good square. And black tries to get onto the c-file. Bishop to c5. Now I suddenly notice that black is kind of threatening. Now knight takes bishop. And e6. Now funnily enough, knight takes c5, knight takes bishop in this position is not so good, because after queen takes, black cannot swap queens. Queen takes c5, d takes c5, because the c-pawn just becomes a queen. There is no piece that can actually stop the c-pawn from queening. That would be rather unpleasant for black. So black just moves off the file. Now I didn't want knight takes bishop to happen. I go back. And black is sort of offering to repeat moves and to make a draw. We'd reached move 30 here. And there is also a rule that you can't offer a draw before move 30 unless it's a repetition, and here my opponent's offering a repetition. But still quite confident at this stage, so comes a5, h6. Also, the other boards were looking quite poor at this point. It looked like Australia was getting done, and the only board where it looked like white was getting some serious pressure was on my board. But in fact, in the end, the other three all won, luckily. So, a5, the idea of a5, instead of repeating, was basically to get my bishop to b6. h6, bishop c5. Now again the same as before. If knight takes, queen takes, and black can't swap the queens because of the pawn will just queen. So now I'm in, and I was quietly confident in this position, I have to admit, because black can't really do anything. And now black played knight to c7. In this position I should probably keep my lock on the position by playing something like queen to d3, which threatens to capture on c7. But the opportunity to play to e6 presented itself, and I just couldn't resist. But it was a little bit impetuous. And here it comes, e6. My point is that if pawn takes e6, queen d3 attacks both the g6 pawn and the a6 pawn, and black can't really afford to give either of them away. So, but he played a very good move, bishop to g7, and in this position what should white play? I played rather quickly. Perhaps it's better in this position to play queen to a4 with the idea of playing queen to d7 or queen to e8 check or something. But I noticed that I can get my queen in on b6, and again can't swap because the pawn queens, and I was quite happy with this position. I must say I overestimated it because the king is quite weak, but on the other hand the bishop is quite strong. Now my original idea in this position was to play knight h4, and then when black defends the pawn with g6, with e6, is to play queen to b1, and the g6 pawn can no longer be defended. But when I got to this position, I noticed that knight h4 would be met by queen to e6, and if white swaps queens and takes on g6, black takes on d4, and in fact has a much better, if not winning, ending, because the a5 pawn is falling as well. So now I have to admit that I still thought I was better, but couldn't find any good moves. So in fact, this position is probably not better for white at all. It may be, but I can't find a way to really make progress. And here in this position I was still very confident, and I thought that after knight to e5 that black would have to take, but he didn't have to take. Queen f5, queen a6, queen e4 check, and now one thing I definitely should not do is lose a piece. But at this point, it had been a long game. My opponent had defended very, very well. I was tired. And, well, all credit has to go to the opponent for coming up with a sneaky trick. And actually my fault for misjudging the position and thinking that I should still be playing for a win. So I played knight back to f3, and my idea was that after bishop takes d4 I move my queen and the a pawn may cause some trouble. But in fact I'd completely overlooked something that I'd actually seen early in a different position, and that is that g5 just wins a piece. There is no way that white can escape the pin, cannot protect the knight, cannot get out of the pin, so the knight's gone. I played a few more moves, took queen to f1, g4, and in this position I was originally intending to play queen to d1 and recapture on f3, but I'm just a piece down for a pawn, and it's just wasting everybody's time. So I decided to give up in this position, congratulate my opponent, and Namibia would have been quite happy because they didn't go down 4-0. I took the day off today because I am quite seriously unwell, so excuse me if the video reports are not coming fast and furious like always, but like they should be. Australia today is playing Norway, quite a good team. I'll have a day or two to rest hopefully until this flu is gone. And the women are playing India, which is going to be a very tough challenge because India are one of the best teams in the world, the Indian women's team. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for your indulgence. Sorry you had to wait so long, and catch up with you soon. Bye-bye.